All right, so we've heard from two researchers who are working on the societal problems. Now let's switch gears and hear from people more on the practice side. So first we'll have Purvi Shah from Pratham Books, who's going to tell us how she's using the books and the knowledge that Pratham Books has and use AI in looking at translating children's books.
Hi, everyone. This is going to be absolutely non-technical, no diagrams, no graphs, and I'm going to start with a story. A story about a fat king written by Parismita. And, the places this fat king traveled with his thin dog and the languages he spoke. And he spoke over 100 languages. And that's the story that I'm going to tell you on how did this fat king learn these 100 languages and talk in these 100 languages. So I'm from Pratham Books, a not-for-profit children's book publisher. We publish children's books in 21 Indian languages. We started off and still are a print publisher. We publish books that reach out to pretty much all government schools across the country. We've distributed about 15 million books till date.
How do you generate the money?
Sorry?
How do you generate the
money? We're a non-profit, so it's part philanthropy, but the books are sold at a marginal cost. So some of the administrative expenses are covered through that income as well. So I think I kind of spoke about that. But the fact is that we still have 300 million children in India. So how do we reach all these children? How do we publish books in more than 100 languages of the country? Because we've been able to do that only in 21 languages in print. So this really kind of required a different way of looking at the problem of getting books to children across the country in different languages. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, which is Storyweaver, which is a digital platform that has a lot of books in many languages and all in open formats. So on Storyweaver, you can read books. What we've done is, to begin, we are about 3 years old with Storyweaver. We took all the content of Pratham Books and we migrated that onto the platform. So we actually disintegrated the book and then revisualized it for the digital platform. So it's all available for anybody, anywhere in the country and outside as well to read for free. We've also given a lot of tools to creators, educators, and translators who can actually come onto the platform. We have a large 15,000 dense image library, and educators can come in and create their own stories. Typically, for example, flashcards. If an educator does not find flashcards for, say, animals in her classroom, she could come onto the platform, curate a list of animal images, and create a storybook within literally less than 7-8 minutes on the platform and publish it online as well. We've also built in tools for translation on the platform, and you can re-level, download and print these books, and we make these books available in several different formats, so EPUB, PDF as well. And all of this is under an open license, CC BY 4.0. Very happy to say that shortly we'll be releasing the entire code for Storyweaver as well under an open license in the next 3 months or so. And we've created a white label version for Storyweaver as well, which will be deployed outside the country shortly, and that too will be released under an open license. So in 3 years, we've scaled from 800 stories to 10,800 stories, 24 languages to 132 languages, and doing fairly well on the user base as well. Some of the reasons why we've been able to scale drastically is, I think, to me, the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons is the fact that we were Unicode compliant. And in the publishing industry, that is something that just doesn't happen. I remember when we were looking at migrating content onto the platform, I used to have discussions with a lot of technologists, people who worked in OCR technologies, to see how can I migrate 1,000 books without human effort onto the platform across 20 Indian languages. And we actually kind of did this exercise for 6 months and then gave up because it was just inaccurate, and it was easier, at least in India, to hire a bunch of people to redo everything, type everything back in Unicode and then upload on the platform. So, and I pushed out the release date of the platform several times because of that. But there was clearly a lot of sense in doing that, because once we did that, I mean, imagine from 21 languages, we went to 24 languages at launch, we went to 131 languages today. And that scale did not require any sort of the manual processes that I had to go through. And I think the other reason why we've been very successful, there are two or three such other platforms globally as well, but one of the key reasons that we've been also successful is because Pratham Books understands how to create a children's book. So the content on the platform per se is really king. It's beautifully illustrated books, really relevant, and educators love the books. Quick use cases on how teachers use these books. Teach for India fellows download the books, project them on classrooms. We've had the government of Punjab actually come in and download a lot of Punjabi books, contextualize them offline, and then print and distribute to 14,000 classrooms in Punjab. All the other digital platforms like World Reader, African Storybook take content from our platform onto theirs, and that's where the EPUB download really helps them to migrate content onto other digital platforms. We've had apps, several reading apps, in the last 5-7 years. Literacy and learning through apps has really boomed, and a lot of people use stories from our platform for some of those apps. We recently had a demo of somebody who wanted to use AR and VR as well within these apps, where a story would get populated, and then at the end of the story, the system would generate a bunch of questions for the child, and then depending on whether the child is answering correctly or not, move the child across the reading and learning journey of the child. But yeah, coming back to the story that I started with, so this fat king ended up speaking 81 languages of the world, and we got about 110,000 reads across all the languages, and 50 languages from 50 countries across the world. Now, why is this important, right? How did this fat king learn to speak Khmer? How did this fat king learn to speak Acholi? It's primarily because of this great community of people that we've kind of invested, collaborated with, just found digitally, never seen them, but people who aligned with the mission and vision of Pratham Books and Storyweaver to get a book in every child's hand in the mother tongue language. And they've kind of come in and created this vibrant community that's helped us scale resources. And I'll talk a little bit about some of these use cases as well. So we've had Konkani Bhasha Mandal, who helped translate 100 stories on the platform, and then eventually printed these and took them to classrooms. The Ugandan Christian University had a really interesting model where they brought in translators, and then they brought in language experts to review those translations, and then publish those stories on the platform. And especially for AI, I think that some of these are interesting models that can be taken forward, where there is a bunch of translations that happen through Translate APIs, but we put in a review group of people who actually review these translations and publish this. We, in fact, have used the Translate API for 2 languages. And initially, when we launched this, I think the communication was a little different. And we got a lot of flack from the translator community saying, are you trying to take our job away? So I think, and I think that Professor Varun talked about this earlier, that it's really important to look at it from the user-centric perspective. It's really important on how you define the problem and how easy do you make it for users. So we've kind of changed the communication now, and we've said, hey, we're trying to make life easier for you, and we've created this draft for you. Would you like to come in and use this as a starting point? And it actually increased the increased the publish rate by, I think, 45% on the platform. So, and we have another QWERTY and their CSR department that actually helped us create resources in Filipino, and they're then sending these resources to childcare centers across Philippines. What we didn't expect, and has happened surprisingly, is this that the platform's actually taken a life of its own for language preservation. And that clearly was not the goal when we started off, But we've had, Azad India Foundation, who works in West Bengal, and there is a dialect called Surjapuri. And the children there have never seen a book in Surjapuri. So when Yuman came onto the platform and translated her first book in Surjapuri and read it out to the children, she tweeted about it, and she said that children were confused that there was a book that they could actually hear and see and feel in their local language. Similarly, we had an officer who was posted in an Naxalite area in Odisha, and I think the children there speak a dialect called Koya. Of course, he couldn't find books in Koya, and he didn't know how to translate it, so he just downloaded some books in Odia and then used that to distribute it. And then there is a story in Triki language, which is an indigenous language of the people of I don't know how to pronounce that, Oaxaco, I think. But interestingly, another use case that we are seeing on the platform is that not all stories get translated from English to another language, while that definitely is the majority of the use case. In this case, for example, we had these people translate these books from Spanish. So as a platform, we're trying to kind of also increase high quality reading material in these bridge languages where minority and indigenous communities can come in and then use that language to translate into other languages. Like, for example, there was another community that translated from Thai to Saguan Karen. And this is again another really touching story. We met this, researchers at Jadavpur University in West Bengal, and they were actually researching, and their project was to actually document all the indigenous languages of West Bengal. And one of the languages that they are capturing is Toto, which is only spoken by 10,000 people there. And she's actually created a book on Toto, and it's interesting because hers was an academic project and it would have stayed within that realm. But when I met her, I said, do you want to like consider putting some of that stuff on Storyweaver so that, of course it becomes reading material for children, but at the same time there's a larger audience to actually consume that content. And she's just done one story yet, but it's there on the platform. And of course, we couldn't have done this with a lot of individual champions. For example, Mohammad Raza Bahadur, who actually created a lot of books in Southern Kurdish because he said that there was no great dictionary available. So he wanted to create the corpora for that dictionary, and he said one of the great ways to do it by creating stories and then using the data from there to supplement into the creation of the dictionary. So yeah, we've grown a lot in languages. 25% of the languages on the platform are tribal, endangered, or minority languages. And by February of this year, we are hoping to have 100 local libraries. What we call is that like at least 100 resources, high quality, verified, approved resources in 100 languages of the world. I don't know if you guys just want to take a break and just enjoy this image for a few seconds. It's really cute. Yeah. All right. We've been using not necessarily always AI, but for example, we do have an offline app which is powered through the Progressive Web App application that allows teachers to download stories in low resource environments, whether they're on a computer or a mobile, and actually read those stories to the children of their classroom. We've just introduced GIF books as well. And this is great, right? Here is somewhere that AI can help. We have read-along audiobooks with SLS. We just launched about 150 of these books in English and Hindi, and we spent an insane amount of time trying to sync up the SLS. So we used whatever was available in the open domain to actually help us with the first tranche of syncing up, but it wasn't great. And being a platform that works with children and educators, we really would like to be 100% there. Not a great thing to talk about in this audience, I understand, but something that we really work upon. So we put in a lot of human effort to make sure that the SLS synced up. And what I've heard from other people within the industry is that is a place where AI could definitely potentially help. We did a project with Microsoft Research, actually along with another nonprofit called CGNet Swara. And the problem that I think CGNet Swara was trying to solve is that they have a lot of content on the platform, and which is in Gondi, which is a tribal language. And there's a lot of human effort and error involved when they're trying to migrate all of that content into Gondi. So I think they collaborated with MSR to see if a machine translation tool could be created for Gondi. And we came in as a partner for the data sets because, guess what? In 20 days, in 10 days with 20 volunteers, we were able to create 300 stories and about 10,000 lines of high quality Gondi text parallel with 5 Indian languages. And that kind of kickstarted the machine translation work from Hindi, Marathi to Gondi, and MSR is working on that currently. I talked about the Translate API problem. It's not 85%, sorry, it's 110%. Somebody talked about Indic languages and not enough tools available. We actually have an open source transliteration tool called Varnam. It was available only in Malayalam when we launched Storyweaver, and we've extended that tool and built it for another 10 Indian languages. It's clearly not in the greatest of its health, but it definitely can be supported, improvised, and it's in the open domain. If anybody wants to collaborate, use it up and pick it up. And we are more than happy to share any of the data that's happening on the platform across those 10, 11 languages. We've just got a project from Microsoft, again, to build a parallel corpora for 5 Indian languages. And this is a different but interesting problem to solve, because I think if I look at the crux of the platform, it's translations. So from a user perspective, if I really want to improve something for the user, it's how can I help them create more efficient translations, and how can I help them create more accurate translations. So what we are trying to do here is that within the literary space, we are trying to create level-based prompts for the user. And this is interesting because many times the translators don't understand what might be the best way for a child to learn or read that story. For example, take a simple word like mountain. Everybody understands it. But if it's a level 1 book, I'd rather use the word hill, because it's a 4-letter word and it's easier understood than a 7, 8-letter word like mountain. We're also working on automated tags for Indic languages that will also then look at, because the text of the story is also available, we'll also looking at automating the categories for the books. And that helps because, with 70% of the content on the platform being user generated, giving these aids right up to the users help them make the right choices. Yeah. And the last thing is again the speech-to-text API, something that we are considering using, because I think it will definitely help increase the efficiency of the translators. So yeah, I mean, literacy is absolutely important. Children, if they don't learn and get confident readers in earlier years of their life, if they don't have access to reading material in their mother tongue languages, are going to fall off the reading train. And if they fall off the reading train, they're going to fall off schools, and that's definitely not a good outcome from any perspective. And it is a global problem. In fact, in some countries, we've seen that the book-to-child ratio in good countries where it is 13 books for one child, in low-resource environments is 1 book for 300 children. It's as bad as that. And 2.3 billion people across the world don't have access to mother tongue So the idea is to build a global network of local language libraries with the use of collaboration, technology, and open source.
No, so that was very interesting. Thanks for presenting. I just, in content, and especially for children, I think quality is one of the key metrics, right? And you alluded to it in the end, that mountain versus hill and so on. So how do you really control quality? Because even in translation, there can be many ways to say a thing. For kids, you would do it differently and so on. And when you have such a large community of volunteers working on translating and so on, so do you have any metrics of quality which is integrated within the technical platform, or it is offline, and how do you manage that? Because I think that will be key when you create so much content.
It's a fantastic question. I had a slide which I dropped actually on that because I thought maybe not for this audience. But so the Pratham Books content and all the content that's on the platform within the 20 languages that Pratham Books produces is high quality because it's our translators, our reviewers. As a strategy, I think 1.5 years down the line, we realized that the amount of content that users are putting on the platform and the amount of content that we are able to put with publishers is just never going to match, which is why today we are at 70% UGC content on the platform. So one of the things that we've strategically started doing is to collaborate as much as possible with either universities, language departments, or organizations like Konkani Bhasha Mandal, right, who can actually get in experts within that language, and then they take over the onus of the quality and the review, and they get a publisher status on the platform. So all that content on the platform that technically falls within either original publishing or translation publishing with trusted partners comes with a recommended tag, and we have an algorithm that always bumps up that content within the platform. But for the content that's not part of this, which is the user-generated content, we actually for the last 1 year, 1.5 year actually worked very hard to build in reviewer communities. So we gave these reviewers special dashboards on the platform, and we vetted whether they had the ability to even look for errors within that language. And we dipsticked this with about 10 languages, and the process was slow, really, really slow. So we again went back to like, how can I invite the user to do this? Because, with a really small team, we were spending a lot of time deciding who is the right person to review. So we're actually in the next 3 months, it's under implementation right now. What we're going to do is we're going to flip it, and for every time you read a story, we're also going to ask the user if you'd like to review the story. And I think that through that, as we start getting a lot of data in terms of, reviewers and the number of stories they reviewed per language and the quality of the review, the system will be able to tell us who are the top 10 reviewers in a language. Then we'll do focus marketing with those reviewers to onboard them in a more aggressive way on the platform potentially. But currently, of all the content that's reviewed through the mechanism that I talked about, content that is 5-star and 4-star actually gets bumped up under editorial reviews and things like that.
Yeah. Hi. So I was wondering if there is a question relevant issue of translating images to be in the right setting, right? I mean, so if you write a book for city kids versus, So have you considered that problem?
Yeah, that's really the next big AI problem that we really like to solve. Oh my God, this is so exciting. So I will talk about this now that it's come up. So I think we've cracked the whole translation and localizing of translation piece, right? But some of the things that I constantly sometimes hear from partners is many times I hear that, it's okay, we are able to find a set of 100 non-culture specific books to translate, and we're using those, and we have a ready list of those which we give to partners to translate. But wouldn't it be awesome if we could actually take 500 stories, create them from scratch with this vision, and build in the tools? And I believe, and we did a little bit of research in the last couple of months talking to experts within computer vision, etc., who are actually saying that style transfer, all of those technologies are possible. And because we have data sets with 15,000-20,000 images from Pratham books, the illustration styles, etc., could actually be copied to other localized areas as well, and still be as good looking. So, if there's hope and you think there is hope, we'd love to catch up with you. Yeah.
Not me, but maybe the vision people in the room might have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, let's thank Purvi again.
Thank you.